Mike Tindall's brutal put-down of Prince Harry reveals what the younger royals, especially Zara, Princess Anne's daughter, really think about the Sussexes.
The last time that Harry and Meghan were in the UK, and Tindall very publicly snubbed the couple then. Mike Tindall is done with Harry.
Honestly, this is such great stuff. Mike Tindall has joked that he remembers Prince Harry when he was fun around 15 years ago.
Mike Tindall just dropped 4 words that hit harder than any royal statement ever could, and Peter Phillips just sent out wedding invitations that speak even louder. At the Hay Literary Festival, in a small Welsh town of barely 1,500 people, Mike Tindall walked onto that stage and said it plain, "Harry when he was fun, past tense, that's it." That's the whole message. The family has been dancing around this for years, and Mike just said the quiet part out loud, in front of a live audience, on a microphone. And while that moment was unfolding in Wales, 400 miles away in the Cotswolds, a private church in a village called Kemble was finalizing a very telling guest list. Peter Phillips, the King's eldest grandson, is getting married on June 6th. The King is going. The Princess of Wales is going. Mike and Zara are going. Princess Anne is personally walking her son down the aisle. But the man who stood right beside Peter at the very chapel where Peter himself would later marry, exactly 10 years later, not on the list.
Mike Tindall, Princess Anne's son-in-law, stood up at the Hay Literary Festival this week and on the record, on the podcast's tape, mocked Harry by name. The line, in his exact phrasing, was Harry when he was fun, past tense.
These 2 stories broke within days of each other, and together they tell one story, a joke and a guest list. 2 different ways of saying the same thing. The family's verdict, delivered twice in 2 different registers. To really understand what just happened, you have to go back through what was actually said, what was actually done, and a photograph from 2022 that nobody knew what to make of at the time. But that suddenly makes everything impossible to ignore. Now the festival. Hay on Wye, Welsh border, literary crowd, flat whites and hardbacks. Mike was on stage with his rugby podcast co-hosts, James Haskell and Alex Payne, doing a live recording. He even told the room that producers had warned him backstage to stay off the subject of Prince Andrew that night. He volunteered that warning and then walked straight past it. The wedding story came up first. Mike was talking about his own 2011 wedding to Zara, the King's niece, teasing Haskell about something he pulled that day. And the comparison he reached for was Harry.
He's getting married to a lovely Harriet, and Harry and Meghan have been snubbed. They've been pushed out.
This is a brutal snub. This is a wild slap in the face. Harry will be devastated. Peter has dumped Harry. It's the ultimate cancellation because it's a royal cancellation. It is a royal snub. It's mind-boggling that Harry wasn't invited. And it's absolutely true, they are husband and wife. But it's Harry who will be feeling this most keenly.
A lot of other people managed that way better than you. And then those 4 words, Harry when he was fun. Let's be clear about who's saying this. Mike Tindall is not some distant royal observer. His daughter Lena, born in 2018, the same year Harry got married, has Prince Harry as her godfather. These 2 families spent Christmases together at Sandringham. Mike and Zara were both at Harry and Meghan's wedding at St. George's Chapel. This man knew Harry. This is the man Harry trusted with the spiritual guidance of his goddaughter, and he just told a festival crowd that the Harry he liked is gone. But Mike wasn't done. Same stage, same night, he pivoted straight to Prince Andrew. A co-host joked that Mike had his own bedroom at Buckingham Palace. Mike fired back. Opposite end to Andrew. He delivered that line on the exact same day Thames Valley Police confirmed they had widened their misconduct investigation into Andrew to include alleged sexual offences. He may not have known the timing, but the room didn't need him to. The joke landed because everyone already knew. Now hold that quote. Hold the past tense. Because while that room in Hay was laughing, Hello magazine, basically the newsletter of record for royal watchers, was running a completely different story. A friend of a royal cousin went on record with 11 words. Peter and Harry haven't spoken for several years, and have simply lost touch. That's the whole explanation.
And can you describe Harry now compared to the Harry you knew? How would you characterize Harry in 2026?
I think he's a nasty, spiteful liar. Thinks only of himself, terrified of Meghan, and that he wants to get the royal family switched out so he can get switched in and give Meghan the best job ever. I think he wants her to be queen. I think I've told you that before. But with Harry, you know, he's determined that everybody thinks that she is as amazing as he does, but he's got it all wrong.
No dramatic falling out, no briefing war. Just the quiet, tidy language families use when they're done explaining. The wedding itself is intimate. All Saints Church, Kemble, Cirencester. Saturday, June 6th. The bride is Harriet Sperling, an NHS nurse with a daughter from a previous relationship. Both Peter and Harriet are divorced, and they actually needed special permission from the vicar just to marry in that church. The king is going. Queen Camilla is going. The Prince and Princess of Wales are going. Princess Anne and Captain Mark Phillips, the groom's divorced parents, are going. Sir Timothy Lawrence is going. Mike and Zara are going. The Edinburgh family is going. 3 names didn't make the list: Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, Sarah Ferguson, and Prince Harry. Royal correspondent Emily Andrews said it plainly on a podcast after the story broke. I think there are many other members of the family who felt that Harry has behaved badly and unforgivably. Not William. The cousins, the aunts, the family members without titles and managed press lines, they have cast their vote.
James Haskell, his friend, they were sort of fine and good friends. But when somebody mentioned Harry, boom, he's out. And that's what's happening. The royal family does not want Harry, and especially Meghan, around.
Mike and Zara Tindall were once very, very close to Harry. So close, in fact, that Harry was chosen as godfather to their second daughter, Lena. But the bottom line is now, according to the Daily Mail, that bond, that relationship between Harry and Mike and Zara it's done.
And this one stings. Peter Phillips and Prince Harry have known each other since the day Harry was born. Peter is 7 years older. These two grew up running in and out of each other's grandmother's houses. At Peter's first wedding, the 17th of May, 2008, St. George's Chapel, Windsor, Harry was there, 23 years old, standing next to his cousin with Chelsea Davy on his arm. Every photograph from that day shows a young man completely in his element, soaking up one of the best days of his year. The cousin he stood beside that afternoon is now the one closing the door. And here's where it gets impossible to brush off, because this May story is actually 4 years late. Go back to June 2022. The late Queen Elizabeth's Platinum Jubilee weekend. A service of Thanksgiving at St. Paul's Cathedral. Harry attended. He sat a row behind William and Catherine. The cousins were all there, the Tindalls, the Phillipses, Beatrice and Eugenie, the Edinburghs. The palace staged it as a unity moment, and the British papers ran it as one the very next day. But body language analyst Judy James, who writes regularly for The Express and is the closest thing British newspapers have to a credentialed reader of these moments, was watching the dispersal photographs carefully. She published an analysis that ran on express.co.uk that Monday, got widely reposted, and then quietly forgotten by everyone except, apparently, the family it was about.
Well, I mean, you got to think too about Andrew and all the teddy bear situations. Like, you probably want to be as far away from the massive teddy bear collection as you can, because that's a little odd. But yeah, it's a hilarious little jive. We all know what he's talking about. And it makes sense that he is able to sort of discuss these things in a fun and interesting way and give a little tidbit without going too far. And the reality is sometimes the royals are funny and there's things that you can poke at. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It shows that he has a sense of humor regarding what has been happening within the family. And sometimes in moments of stress, you need that funny bone to kind of get you through it.
Here is what she wrote. Zara looks happy to chat and even turns fully to talk to Harry, who is looking anxious and keen to get into his own car. Mike, though, remains facing forward, looking about and holding his order of service up with a look of awkwardness. In the end, he talks to Viscount Linley, who turns his own back on Harry, cutting the two men off from Zara's conversation with Harry. That analysis is 4 years old, and it reads like a spoiler for everything that just happened. Mike Tindall, holding an order of service up like a small paper wall between himself and Prince Harry. Zara, doing the work of polite family conversation entirely on her own. Viscount Linley turning his back to seal the geometry of the moment shut. That photograph was a forecast, and nobody read it as one in time. The detail that keeps pulling focus is Mike's right hand not resting at his lap, but held up against his chest, keeping that paper wall steady. The signal was already there. There was just no verdict attached to it yet. And before anyone says a quip is just a quip, a body language read is just opinion, and an anonymous source is just an anonymous source, 4 separate things don't make a pattern on their own.
And the reason why this is a brutal snub is because Peter Phillips and Harry have been very, very close for many years, going all the way back to 1997 when Diana passed. And he was sent to Balmoral to be an emotional minder, like a safeguarding figure for the boys. And they've been very close for the entirety of Harry's life. Much loved cousins, of course.
And they're not letting them go. They're pushing back and pushing back. But, I think that's fair enough if you don't like somebody and they've behaved badly. He thinks you just put it on the shelf. But it's childish. It's ridiculous.
But this convergence isn't built on one fact. It's built on 4 dates, all pointing the same direction. The 4th of June, 2022, St. Paul's. The paper wall. The 10th of March 2026 analyst Angela Levin on Talk TV, watching Harry's hand pull away from Meghan's arm in a recent clip. Then, hello, world exclusive in May, a friend of the couple putting 11 words on record. And finally, that Friday in Hey on Why, 4 words past tense on a live stage. Same family, same person at the center, 4 years. One direction. One of those things alone is just noise. 4 of them lined up like that is what a verdict looks like before anyone officially calls it one. And here is what the collision of these 2 stories is actually revealing. The institution Capital One, the palace machine, has not formally said a single word about Prince Harry's standing in this family. The institution doesn't need to say a word because this verdict was never theirs to deliver. It lives in what Mike Tindall says without a press release. It lives in who Peter Phillips invites without a public statement. It lives in what Princess Anne, one of the most quietly respected figures in that entire family, decided was appropriate for her own son's wedding.
So the first thing I would do in terms of what she really thought about Meghan is to dismiss this, because I really don't think that the late Queen, after spending all those years of duty and service and not showing her emotions, would suddenly pitch up at the wedding of the grandson that she kind of doted on. I mean, she was very fond of Harry, and sit there with that face deliberately to show her disapproval. So I'm going to delete that one.
The people without offices are the ones who actually define what a family is. And then there's Angela Levin, the biographer, who spent 15 months with Harry before he ever even met Meghan. She watched a recent television appearance in March and said something on Talk TV that deserves far more attention than it got. You see him moving his hand away from her because he doesn't want her to keep hanging onto his arm. It's too much, and he can't stand it. Levin on a credentialed broadcaster in March. Tindall on a festival stage in May. 2 different people. 2 completely different rooms watching the same man, and neither of them coordinated it. Neither of them needed to. Now, slow down for a moment, because the clearest way to feel the full weight of this verdict is to walk through 3 Saturdays, because 3 Saturdays tell this entire story better than any palace statement ever could. The first Saturday, the 17th of May, 2008, St. George's Chapel, Windsor Castle.
That the lady who's getting married, Harriet Sperling, wouldn't want Meghan there at the wedding because if you remember, Eugenie had a wedding very soon after Harry and Meghan had a wedding, and Meghan ruined it by telling everyone that she was pregnant, and everybody was absolutely, thank you, how wonderful, how lovely, and Eugenie was very, very upset about it.
Well, this is a picture in one frame on the morning of the recording day. Mike Tindall mug on the Hay Festival stage with Harry's name placed in the past tense and the disgraced former Duke of York in the same comedic vid.
Peter Phillips, 29 years old, is marrying Autumn Kelly. Harry, 23 years old, is sitting in those pews with Chelsea Davy, laughing in a morning coat, looking like he owns the whole afternoon. The photographs from that day show exactly what a tight royal family looks like when it's still functioning cousins together. No tension, no managed distances, no paper walls. These weren't strangers navigating protocol. These were two young men who had grown up in and out of the same grandmother's houses, who shared the same holidays, the same family lunches, the same private world that very few people on Earth ever get access to. Peter is 7 years older, but that gap had long since stopped mattering. They moved through that chapel like people who genuinely enjoyed each other's company. That afternoon in 2008 is the baseline. That is what the relationship looked like before anything changed. Then comes the second Saturday, the 19th of May 2018, same chapel. St. George's Chapel, Windsor Castle. Now Harry is the groom. Meghan Markle is walking down that aisle in Givenchy. The whole world is watching, and every single person Harry stood beside 10 years earlier is now standing in those pews for him.
He was full on opening car doors for her as if she was the principal and he was security. That's not his job. It's actually probably making their security officials, it's making it more challenging for them to actually manage the people they're supposed to protect, because he needs to do all these things for her, I think, to make her happy.
Mike and Zara Tindall are there. Peter Phillips is there. The cousins showed up. The family showed up. In that moment, the 2008 wedding and the 2018 wedding form a clean, unbroken line, same chapel, same family, same loyalty running in both directions. If you had frozen time on that May afternoon in 2018 and asked anyone in that chapel whether Harry would be excluded from a cousin's wedding 8 years later, the answer from every single person present would have been no. The idea would have seemed genuinely absurd. That is how intact things still looked from the outside on that second Saturday. But here is what nobody inside that chapel could have told you in 2018. The signals were already starting, not loudly, not in press releases or public statements, quietly, in the way that family shifts always happen first, in body language, in private conversations, in the slow recalibration of who gets invited to what, and who gets left off which list.
Mike Tindall, who actually has been very, very friendly with Harry, but he said at this book fair that Harry is no fun anymore. Now, Harry will be very upset because they were very good friends. Mike Tindall is married to Zara Phillips, who's the daughter of Princess Anne, and they don't want them around. They absolutely don't.
The institution wasn't doing this. The family was doing this on its own, in its own time, by its own rules. Which brings you to the third Saturday, the 6th of June 2026. All Saints Church, Kemble, in the Cotswolds. Peter Phillips, now 48, is marrying Harriet Spurling. The King is there. Queen Camilla is there. The Prince and Princess of Wales are there. Princess Anne, one of the hardest working and most privately decisive members of that entire family, is walking her son down the aisle herself. Mike and Zara Tindall are there. The Edinburgh family is there. Sir Timothy Lawrence is there. The whole family assembled in a small Cotswolds church on a Saturday in June, celebrating one of their own, and the man who stood beside Peter at that first Saturday in 2008, the man Peter himself stood beside at that second Saturday in 2018, is simply not expected to be there. No drama attached to the announcement, no public falling out, no heated exchange captured on camera, just 11 words from a friend of the couple, quietly placed on record in Hello magazine. Peter and Harry haven't spoken for several years and have simply lost touch. That is the entire official explanation.
Yeah, I spent 15 months with him. He was lovely. He was good fun. He could get a bit annoyed, but he was lovely with the children who were from difficult families. He was fine to people who'd had bad effects from the wars. And he was nice. He was funny. He was very kind to me. We had nice chats. He could just get a little bit irritable, but that's a lot of people do if they're very busy. But overall, I got on with him very well. I liked him a lot.
Tidy, quiet, and in the careful language that families use when they have already made a decision and don't feel the need to justify it out loud. Same family. 3 Saturdays. 18 years between the first and the third, and the aisle they once genuinely shared no longer makes room for him. That progression from laughing in a morning coat at someone's wedding to being the groom at your own with all those same people present, to not receiving the envelope at all, that is not a small thing. That is the shape of how a family closes a door. Now, here is the piece of this that people keep missing, because the conversation tends to focus on William, on the formal institution, on the palace machine and what it has or hasn't officially said. But the palace machine has said nothing about Harry's standing. No statement, no carefully worded briefing, no courtier on background. The institution has stayed quiet because the institution doesn't need to speak. The family already spoke, and the family that spoke isn't the formal one. It's the cousins, the aunts, the people who don't have press secretaries or communications teams or crisis management consultants on speed dial. These are the people who actually decide, in real time, what a family is and who belongs in it, and they have been deciding, quietly and consistently, since at least 2022. That 2022 photograph from St. Paul's Cathedral is the piece of this story that reframes everything else. Platinum Jubilee weekend.
It's a shocker. At this wedding, Harry's had no invite, reportedly.
No.
But it's very likely the King and William will be there.
I think they are intended to go, but we don't know yet. It's supposed to be a very quiet wedding. It's on June the 6th, but it is a second wedding for both of them, and sensibly they don't want a huge, big wedding. But I think they might go. It depends, actually, if Princess Anne wants her brother to come along. But it's definitely not being asked, and she doesn't want them there, and that's very, very sensible, I think. You don't want to start an argument.
A service of thanksgiving. The palace planned it as a show of unity, and the British press dutifully reported it as one the following morning. But body language analyst Judy James was watching the dispersal, not the formal seating, and what she saw in those photographs was something entirely different. Mike Tindall holding his order of service up against his chest like a physical boundary. Zara doing the conversational work on her own. Viscount Linley turning his back to complete the geometry of the moment. Harry, by James's reading, looking anxious and keen to reach his own car. That was June 2022. 4 years before the festival stage in Hay, 4 years before the wedding invitation that never arrived, the signal was already there, held steady in Mike Tindall's right hand, pressed against his chest, at a Thanksgiving service in London. The reason that photograph matters so much now is because of what it does to the timeline. This is not a reaction to something Harry did recently. This is not a response to a specific interview or a specific moment in the last year or two. This is a position that has been forming, solidifying, and expressing itself consistently across 4 years through body language in 2022.
What does it mean for Harry's relationship with the royal family? Because Peter is very close to William, and they're all in England, and they're all royals, and it's very much Team Wales versus Team Sussex. And Team Sussex, I've got to tell you, is an increasingly lonely place.
Through a biographer's observation on live television in March 2026, through a friend's 11 words in Hello, in May, and through 4 words on a festival stage in Wales. 4 data points, 4 years, 1 direction. That is not noise. That is a pattern, and patterns in families don't form overnight. And then there is the specific weight of who Mike Tindall is in this story, because that matters enormously, and it tends to get flattened in the coverage. Mike Tindall is not a distant cousin twice removed who never really knew Harry. He is not a royal adjacent figure commenting from the outside. This is the man Harry trusted with the godparenthood of a child. Lena Tindall, born in 2018, the same year Harry got married, has Prince Harry as her godfather. That is not a ceremonial title in this family. That is a genuine bond, chosen deliberately, between 2 men who were genuinely close. These 2 families spent Christmases together at Sandringham. They moved through the same private world, shared the same private spaces, knew each other the way that only people who have actually lived alongside each other can know each other. When Mike Tindall uses the past tense on a public stage, it lands differently than it would coming from anyone else, because he is not speaking from a distance. He is speaking from the inside. He is speaking as someone who was actually there, who actually knew the person he is now describing in past tense. That is what gives those 4 words their specific, unmistakable weight. And the same logic applies to Angela Levin, 15 months with Harry before Meghan, not a tabloid commentator working from speculation and public appearances, a biographer who had genuine access, who sat with him, who built enough of a relationship that Harry let her in, and who is now watching a television clip in March 2026 and describing what she sees in language that is specific and personal and entirely without sentimentality. He doesn't want her to keep hanging onto his arm. It's too much, and he can't stand it. That is not the language of someone reading a public figure from a distance. That is the language of someone who knew what the baseline looked like and can see how far it has moved. 2 witnesses, 2 different kinds of access, 2 different moments, the same essential observation delivered in 2 different registers, and both of them pointing at the same conclusion. What this story is actually about, underneath the festival jokes and the wedding guest lists and the body language analysis, is something much simpler and much harder to argue with. It is about what happens when a family stops waiting for a formal moment to express how it feels and starts expressing it the only way families actually can, through presence and absence, through past tense and missing envelopes, through who holds a paper wall steady and who gets the invitation and who does not. Institutions issue statements. Families do something quieter and in many ways far more final. They just stop making room. The institution, the palace machine, the communications apparatus, the formal monarchy has not said a single word about Harry's standing. It doesn't need to, because the verdict was never going to come from there. It was always going to come from the people who actually knew him. The people who shared the Christmases and the chapels and the Sandringham holidays and the inside jokes that never made it into any memoir. Those are the people who have been deciding slowly, consistently, without press releases or public drama, what this family looks like now and who belongs in the picture. Mike Tindall said it in 4 words on a stage in Wales. Peter Phillips said it with an envelope that was addressed to everyone except one person. Princess Anne said it by walking her son down an aisle where that one person was not expected. And a friend of the couple said it in 11 words to Hello magazine, in the quiet, tidy language of families who have already decided and no longer feel the need to explain themselves. That is what a verdict looks like when it doesn't come with a press release. And it hits harder because of it, because there is no spin on it, no management, no carefully constructed narrative, just 3 Saturdays, 4 years, and a family that has made up its mind. Now drop your verdict in the comments below. Does Mike Tindall's joke land harder because he was standing there in 2018, or because he is still standing there in 2026? Every single comment gets read. If this story kept you locked in from the beginning, hit that like button. It genuinely helps get these stories in front of more people who care about them. Subscribe so you do not miss what is coming next, because there is a lot more dropping this week. The next one comes Friday, the 2008 photograph that nobody has been able to look at the same way since Mike Tindall walked off that Hay Festival stage. You are going to want to be here for that one. Do not miss it.